When I was a kid, my family used to go boating at this lake, and there would be these really high rock walls that me and my brothers would jump off of. It's like cliff jumping into the water or whatnot. What I found is that very often, when I would go up onto the top of those rock walls and I started to think about what could go wrong, if I started to consider how high up I was, I started to consider hitting the bottom and if there were rocks underneath or anything like that, I would psych myself out of starting. I would psych myself out of just doing it. It's like this is almost in a way the same reason why we procrastinate. Because we think about how difficult this thing is going to be. We think about the effort and the strain related to this. We start to psych ourselves out. We think about it too much. Whereas if I went up to that rock wall and I just jumped and I thought about it later and I considered it once I was at the bottom, it's like once you start something, it's much easier to just go with it. It's really the resistance comes in before you begin. And so, in terms of procrastination, there's this very valuable trait or skill that I've learned to embody when it comes to getting things done more easily or maintaining consistent habits without having to put things off for later. One good way of doing this is to lie to yourself in a way. It's like just a little lie, something that you can almost believe, and that's to tell yourself to just do a small amount of this specific thing. Like, if you need to get this assignment done, if you have a goal of doing some amount of homework every single day, tell yourself, I'm going to go do 5 minutes of homework. Set an alarm, get yourself to sit down for 5 minutes, and I promise that if you're into those 5 minutes, if you've worked on your homework for 5 minutes, you might just want to finish it at that point. Like the resistance is gone right off the bat. So it's like, in a way, it's so much harder to begin something because we put this giant wall in front of us. Like we tell ourselves, like, I need to finish my homework. I need to, and then you have this idea that you're gonna sit and do all your homework in one sitting. And it's much easier, even though it seems paradoxical, to sit down and do all of your homework going into it the mindset you're only going to do it for 5 minutes than it is to sit there and finish all your homework going into the mindset that you're going to finish all your homework. It's like with these YouTube videos, sometimes I don't want to sit and edit for like 5 hours straight because sometimes it does take that amount of effort. So instead of telling myself you're going to sit and make an entire YouTube episode in one sitting, I tell myself, hey, you should work for a couple minutes, just check in on things, like look at the audio, like whatever I have to tell myself to get myself to start. And once you're in the process of that thing, once you're like halfway through or 15% through or whatever, like once you get into that flow state, it's much easier to just keep at it. And I wouldn't say to like give yourself an easy out, like once you're in there, don't just like immediately jump ship after 5 minutes or whatever. Like give yourself long enough to really get into the process of that thing because it's like there's going to be a period when you're starting something where you're still in that state of resistance, where it's still really difficult to keep at it. It's like if you're trying to like go to the gym or something, like do something hard lifting weight, it's like telling yourself just get in the door is not going to be enough because like until you're actually moving that weight, you could take it or leave it. Like you'd be down to just leave the gym at that point, even though you've driven all the way there, like for sure. And I have this problem where before I go to the gym, especially like on leg day or one of these harder exercises, it's like it's really hard for me to want to go, but I tell myself like just drive there and you have the entire drive to think about this. So I'll just get there and I'll start driving. And if I drive all the way there, I'm much more likely to see it through. I'm much more likely to see it through once I'm actually in the gym lifting weights too. I've never driven to the gym and then left, obviously, but like, um, I imagine like it's better to actually be in the process of that thing rather than just putting yourself in an environment to do that. But that's a secondary point. If you can't get yourself to summon up that willpower to try and push through that initial resistance a little bit, like instead of telling yourself, do this thing for 15 minutes, try to just put yourself in a location that you're more likely to be productive in or you're more likely to take on this activity. Like if you have some homework to do, for example, I know I keep coming back to this, but it's like, for example, if you have some homework to do, tell yourself, I'm going to take my homework and I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to sit on one of these desks with my homework in front of me, and then I can do whatever I'm doing right now, whatever I'm doing to procrastinate doing my homework. So you tell yourself like I'm gonna continue watching this YouTube video about World War II or whatever. Like sometimes that's what I do. I tell myself like it's still productive. You're watching a video about history, but it's really just for entertainment mostly. But yeah, I tell myself like okay, yeah, I'm gonna sit and watch this YouTube video and I'm gonna learn about, World War II. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to have my homework in front of me and I'm going to be at the library. So I go there and I have my homework in front of me and I'm at the library on my phone watching this video. And it's like, yeah, maybe I finished that entire video. Maybe the homework's in front of me and it still seems really hard to start it and I'm still procrastinating. But eventually, if I finish that video and I tell myself, like, all right, well, you're basically here, you just do like a couple of minutes and then you can watch another video, like lie to yourself just a little bit more. Tell yourself, I'm already here at the library, I just finished a video. How about I get 5 minutes of homework done? And then you start on the homework, and once you get past that initial starting phase where it's really uncomfortable and you don't know what you're doing, once you like really get in the stride, like you might just want to tell yourself, like, hey, if I finish this, then it's off my plate. Then I can watch YouTube videos about World War II all day long. So it's like I wouldn't quite say it's like gaslighting yourself, but it's the same way like, I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but it's like when I was jumping off that cliff, like when I was doing that cliff jump, you know, when I first went up there, I didn't want to jump. Like my full family had to pressure me. They'd be like, "Jump, Lincoln! I promise it's fun. Like, jump into the water." And I'd be like, "All right, I don't know." And part of me would want to just like walk down and not jump at all. And sometimes I would walk down. But if someone like pushed me, if someone just like got me to do it, or I just forced myself to do it, then I wanted to do it again because once I've done it once, it's not uncomfortable anymore. There's less resistance. Then I run back up that rock and jump again. Or like with scary roller coasters when I was a kid, like it'd be really scary and uncomfortable. Like I wouldn't want to get on this roller coaster, especially when I was a kid. But once I had done that roller coaster once, like once I'd gone through that experience, it's much more natural. And it's sort of similar with, anything in life where once you're like deep enough into something, once you're like sort of hitting your stride with it or have experienced that, you know, there's this quote by Epictetus. He's a Stoic philosopher I really like. He says, "We often suffer more in imagination than reality." And that's very true. Like, we overestimate something before we go in. Like, I promise, whatever it is, it's not going to be as bad as you think it is. Or sometimes it might be worse, but the reality is that if you're aware enough of something, like if you understand something well enough, you're going to have a somewhat accurate depiction of what it's going to be like, inflated out of stress. Like when I wanted to go take my driving test a couple years ago to get my driver's license, it was so much more stressful than I expected it to be. I mean, it was so much less stressful than I expected it to be. All of the stress came from the build up to that thing. All the stress came from sitting and thinking about it and dwelling upon that constantly instead of just waiting until the time was right and showing up and doing it. I think that's what he means when he says we suffer more in imagination than reality. Because obviously, sitting and thinking about doing your homework for a couple of minutes isn't as bad as doing your homework for a couple of minutes. But if you sit there and you're stressing about how you have to get something done for hours and hours and hours, then that's going to be worse. It's going to be more suffering in a way than just actually doing it and getting it out of the way and having it off your conscience. So it's like, you know, if you really need to get something done and you're struggling with procrastination, or maybe you're someone who just procrastinates in general, like you have a hard time getting anything done, I would say like, there's other methods as well that might work, but the reality is ultimately you're going to have to get past that resistance. Once you're into something, once you're in the process of something, I think that at that point you've already won because you've already gone over the hard part. But, you're going to have to get through that resistance. Whether it's like I said, going to the library and setting up shop, getting yourself in the right environment, maybe even, having a partner, like having someone that can keep you accountable, like with the gym, for example, like it's really helped to have someone that, you know, is also going to the gym with me, like someone who's I'm accountable to and who is accountable to me. Like some days I don't want to go to the gym and my gym partner doesn't hit me up at all, but because I know that like we're accountability partners, I will get him to come to the gym. Like I'll call him and say like let's go, even though I'm the one who really doesn't want to and I might not have to if I didn't call him. It's like having someone you're accountable to will help you be more consistent. I think that's why some people are more able to work a job than they are to, pursue something on the side and put in hours on something that they care about in their own life, because it's like you're not accountable to anyone if you give up on yourself. But it's like if you don't show up to work one day, it's going to cause all these problems. Your boss is going to get mad. So it's like sometimes it's helpful to have someone that you're accountable to, like have a friend that if you don't do your homework, they'll hold it against you in some way. Or like sometimes people like will reward themselves. Like you tell yourself like, yeah, I can, go get some a dozen of donuts or whatever if I finish my homework. And it's like whatever you have to tell yourself, whatever you have to do to start that thing, once you're like in the process of it, like I think that's the key, is then it's not as bad as you thought, like nothing is quite as bad as you imagine it might be when you start. And so, and once you have the momentum on your side, you almost like don't want to stop, because then it's like you're gonna have to go through that again. Like if you're in the middle of some big test, some big stressful exam that's like 3 hours long, you'd almost like rather just do it all in one sitting, instead of like a teacher telling you like, oh, you have to stop, we're gonna pick this up again tomorrow. It almost is like kind of annoying, because you're like, well, like, bro, I got myself to do this, like I'm almost done, just let me finish it right now, because you don't want to have to go through that beginning again. Like everything is the hardest at first. Like I think that's just a universal principle. Everything is hardest at first, and it becomes more easy or more natural or less intensive or less like demanding of you as you get deeper and deeper into it. And I don't know, maybe this isn't true for everyone in every situation, but if this helped you in any way, if this was able to help you procrastinate less, then I'm glad, because the reality is procrastination kills your dreams. It's like we only have so much time in our lives. Like we don't have enough time to just sit around wasting it, like procrastinating or not pursuing things like we should be. Like just do it. Just jump into it, and however much you can get done is better than nothing. It's better than sitting on TikTok or something.